You're worthless. You can't take care of the chores and the kids. Let's divorce. And also pay the alimony. John showed up for the first time at the hospital 2 weeks after I was in a traffic accident. Spoke these outrageous words without even showing concern for me as I lay on the hospital bed. Initially, I had thought better of John, assuming he had finally come to visit me, but he was a disappointing husband after all. I let out a big and long sigh. Honestly, I had been thinking about wanting a divorce myself. I didn't expect John to bring it up today, but I suppose I should be thankful that it saved us of the trouble. Fine. John was surprised to see me agree without any conflict. Unfortunately for you, John, I know what you're up to. I wanted to tell him. I was laughing inside my head. My name is Catherine. I'm a 35-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, John, and our 7-year-old daughter, Emma. John and I met at a blind group date and got married when I was 28. He was easy to talk to, and with him coming on to me, I finally gave in and we started dating. John was handsome, and when we first met, it was clear he was the most attractive one at the table. So when he told me that he liked me, I felt proud. John really devoted himself to our relationship. He prepared surprise dessert plates and bouquets at fancy restaurants for my birthdays, and always took me on trips on our anniversaries. He would even write me letters to express his feelings at just the right moments, and I didn't know what I did to deserve such a man. Of course, I accepted John's marriage proposal without hesitation. Being with John, who loves surprises, I thought the everyday will be exciting even after marriage. Me feeling over the moon, did not expect what was coming next. How he would change into a loser after marriage. Hey, Catherine, my dinner's not ready yet. I worked all day, and you can't even prepare dinner before I return? I can't believe how lazy you are. Once our marriage life began, he started to insist that he was the master of the house and that I was the master's caretaker. At first, I thought he was just joking around. In fact, we used to laugh at each other's silly jokes when we were dating. We were laughing at the sweet newlywed life that everyone imagines at least once, like calling each other by nicknames even after getting married or remaining lovey-dovey even after having children. But he was not joking. He treated me as if I were a servant or something worse. At first, I used to retort, "Stop joking around." But gradually, as I started to realize he's being serious, he really thinks I'm his caretaker, and that gave me the chills. Since getting married, I had to quit my job, and we were living on the money John earned. Therefore, I feared that if I disobeyed him, he might punish me financially, so I couldn't do anything. Frankly speaking, John's income isn't very high. I was earning more when I was working. John is a high school graduate and has been hopping from one job to another. His fickle nature continues to this day, quitting jobs within a year or two. It seemed that John had a complex feeling about his background, and it appeared that he was venting his frustration on me at home. I'm sorry, I got delayed with some errands. Don't make excuses, just hurry up and make it, John said, and immediately sat on the couch with a cold beer in his hand. It was a scene I had grown accustomed to, but I sighed and began to cook. My marriage life made me miserable, but I got by, not caring. The following year, after getting married, Emma was born, and my everyday was a continuous of daily struggle. As I expected, John was a man who hardly took care of our child. Even so, he would buy candy or toy that Emma wanted and spoiled her excessively. I wanted to raise Emma into a decent person, so I would naturally scold her when she did something wrong, which made her more attached to John. Emma, you like Daddy, don't you? Yeah, Daddy's cool. I love Daddy. I knew it. I'm super dad. Upon hearing Emma's reply, John looked at me with a smug expression. Although it was frustrating, the fact that a child loves her father is a good thing, so I just sighed. Despite spoiling Emma this way, he never showed up at the kindergarten sports festival or recitals. You know, there's a parent-child race at Emma's sports festival. Could you participate? Huh? Why me? You're free that day, you do it. I'm busy with work every day. But isn't it a chance to deepen our bond as parents? The sports festival is on a Sunday, so you won't have to work. Shut up. We're already bonded. Rather, you might want to deepen your bond with Emma. She thinks you're a wicked bitch, you know? Maybe you should work on that. LOL. John went to work, laughing at me. A super dad that does not show up to school events. I was worried that John's character of being indulgent with himself and strict to others might rub off on Emma. John continued to leave all household chores and child rearing to me and was lazy at home. Now Emma is 6 years old and has reached the age to go to elementary school, but John was still switching from job to job. He recently quit the factory where he had been working until last month and changed jobs to a company in the food and beverage industry. I'll be working on weekends at my next job since it's in the food industry. Really? It seems like we'll be like ships passing in the night then. It can't be helped, it's work. Yes, I know, but I was actually relieved because I was fed up with being ordered to do housework by John on weekends. I don't have to be ordered to do the chores, I'll do it myself. I hated being nagged, "This floor is dirty," or "Serve the meal quickly." But if John was going to be out on a holiday, Emma would be sad. For a child, it's better to spend holidays with the whole family. Anyway, I have work, so please let Emma know. I understand. I couldn't complain to John, who was earning a living for our family. I reluctantly went to tell Emma about John's work. I'm sorry. You won't be able to go out with Daddy on his day off. I thought Emma would be sad and I told her so with a scowled expression. However, contrary to my expectations, Emma looked unconcerned. It's okay. It is? If you're okay with it, he's not going to be here on all weekends. You know that, right? Yeah, Daddy has been smelling strange lately. A strange smell? Emma nodded and went back to her room. What on earth is she talking about? Recently, I have been overwhelmed by housework and child rearing, and I had no time to notice anything about him. Our marital life wasn't the same as before, and I was making an effort not to be around John so as not to provoke him. Well, it might be the smell from the factory. That explanation made the most sense to me. Factories might use special solvents, so it would be natural for John to have a strange smell. If that's the case, the strange smell will be gone soon. Children are really honest. That's what makes them adorable. In the end, as John had said, he started leaving early in the morning on his day off. What's strange is that he also leaves the house every day on weekdays. If he's working on weekends, he should have a day off during the week. When he leaves in the morning, he goes without saying anything to me, so I can't tell if he's going to work or not. I wonder what he could be doing all alone, leaving so early even on his days off. I became curious and asked John, "You seem to be going out every day off. What are you doing?" John blinked in confusion for a moment, then answered, scratching his head in an annoyed manner. "I'm working. I'm new, so I'm going to work voluntarily." "Really? But you should take care of yourself, or your body won't hold up." "Shut up! Don't complain about my job." I don't understand why John gets so angry about this when he complains about my housework and child rearing. I didn't believe what John said. There's no way John, who usually avoids trouble, would voluntarily go to work on his days off. I knew this because I had been watching him closely for many years. If he was that passionate about work, he would have stayed at his previous company longer. I also paid attention to and investigated the strange smell that Emma had mentioned. Indeed, John came home from work with a sweet, striking fragrance. The strange smell was not from the factory. Why didn't I notice this before? I lamented my own naivety and vowed never to make such a mistake again. From that point on, I decided to carefully observe John. On weekdays, when he said he was going to work, he seemed to wake up an hour earlier than usual and carefully groom himself. He seemed to be in a good mood on those days. The day varied from week to week, sometimes being Wednesday, sometimes Thursday, but it was clear that John is happy on that day. When John left the house, I went into his room to see if there was anything that could serve as a clue. I felt like a police officer conducting a search of a house. Since I always cleaned John's room, I was familiar with it, and I didn't feel guilty. If John had left any clues, he would likely have left them somewhere you could not spot easily. I searched carefully under the desk and bed. Finally, in a candy tin in the closet, I found a large number of letters. What is this? All the letters were from the same person, named Mia. They were properly sent through the mail. Looking at the postmark dates, the oldest was from 2 months ago and the most recent was sent yesterday. As I read the letter, I found phrases like, "I regret it when we broke up, but now I really love you," or "I want to go back to the time when I was with you," or "I love you," just like a teenage girl in the throes of youth would say. At first, I thought it was John's ex-girlfriend sending letters unilaterally, but I found a concerning sentence in one of the letters. "I'm glad you like me again. I'm looking forward to our next date." A truly joyful sentence jumped out at me. The date on it was from last week. It seems John is meeting this Mia girl today. He's definitely guilty. With that conviction, I took evidence photos of the content of the letters on my smartphone. I considered confiscating the letters, but moving carelessly might arouse John's suspicion. Even though I had obtained physical evidence, it felt insufficient as proof. After thinking for a while, I hired a private investigator to look into John's personal life. 3 weeks later, the investigator reported the results. I was surprised to receive the results so quickly. What the investigator brought were pictures of John walking arm in arm with Mia and exchanging passionate embraces in the park at night. There was even a recording of them saying "I love you" to each other. I calmly accepted the facts on these evidences. With solid evidence in hand, I went straight to the municipal office and came back with a divorce form. Now that I knew John was cheating, there was no reason to cling to him anymore. I swore to thrust the divorce papers in John's face the next time something definitive happened. I returned home and heaved a deep sigh. I was acting as I was fine all this time, but honestly, I was devastated. I was angry at myself for having married a careless person like John. I thought about resting a bit before preparing dinner when my cell phone rang. Hello, yes? Catherine, do you have time to talk? Yes, what's going on? I was genuinely surprised by the sudden call from my father. He usually doesn't call me. Actually, your mother and I talked yesterday, and we're thinking about transferring our assets to you soon. Huh? What happened? My father ran a company that sold imported goods from overseas to Japanese corporations. In short, I was the daughter of the president of a big company. But I had never told John about this. I thought it would sound like I was bragging, especially since John was flitting from one company to another. What could my father mean by transferring assets to me? We're getting old. We're thinking about retiring. We considered keeping the company going, but we didn't want to push it onto you, our only daughter. So we've decided to step away now. I see. Honestly, I felt guilty about not taking over the company, but my parents respected my decision not to take over and had considered what to do in the future. I was overwhelmed by their kind consideration. So we're thinking of handing over our assets to you. Our total wealth is $14 million, but we're fine with just $1 million. We've decided to give you the remaining $13 million. What? $13 million? Even I was surprised by this figure. Such a huge amount of money, $13 million, is something I could never earn in my entire life. Yes, there will probably be inheritance tax, but there should still be quite a bit left. You won't have to worry about living expenses for the rest of your life. Dad, thank you. I expressed my utmost gratitude to my father and mother and hung up the phone. $14 million would be coming my way soon. With that money, I wouldn't have any worries even if I divorced John. No offense to John, but he probably doesn't have the ability to earn that much money. I felt saved and was in a daze for a while. I looked at the clock. It was 5 p.m. I realized I needed to prepare dinner and looked into the refrigerator, but there were no groceries left for dinner. I got ready to go shopping at the supermarket. After hearing about the assets from my father, my heart felt light. But there was also a sense of urgency that John might come home soon, so I was walking quickly. As the last crosswalk to the supermarket turned green, and I hurried across. Watch out! Someone yelled out, but my body was already soaring through the air. My body slammed into the ground, and a strong impact pierced my head. Without understanding what had happened, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was lying on the hospital bed. The first thing that caught my eye when I opened my eyes were my parents and Emma. Catherine, thank goodness. Mom! Emma was sobbing next to me. I gently stroked her head. You were hit by a car and fractured both legs. They say it will take 3 months for a full recovery. 3 months? I felt dizzy at the thought of that long period of time. From that day on, I was confined to a wheelchair. Although the nurses took care of me, I felt frustration and irritation at not being able to use my legs. During my hospital stay, my parents and friends came to visit me. Apparently, my parents are now taking care of Emma. Since John is always at work, I thought that would be better for Emma. I was happy that everyone came to visit me, but John never showed. I doubted his sensitivity, thinking, aren't we husband and wife after all? I couldn't help but imagine that he must be enjoying his daily life with his ex-girlfriend. However, 2 weeks after the start of my hospitalization, John finally showed up. "Hey, feeling good?" John, who must have known that I wasn't well, asked ironically. I replied lightly, "Yes." "Man, I was shocked. It's a mess here without you at home." John, who complains about my not doing housework at home, as soon as he opens his mouth, seems to lack human empathy. I sighed. I thought that even John would be at least a little worried about me. "What can I do? I was in a car accident." When I retorted, John looked at me with contempt and said, "What are you talking about? You're useless if you can't do a housework or childcare. Let's divorce. And you'd better pay alimony." He blurted out such outrageous things to his hospitalized wife. Although I first reassessed John, thinking he finally came to visit me, he was still a disappointing husband. I sighed heavily again. Honestly, I had been thinking of wanting a divorce myself. I hadn't expected John to bring up divorce today, but I might as well be thankful that it saved me the trouble of arguing. Sure. John's eyes widened in surprise when I nodded. "Unfortunately, I know your true intentions." I wanted to say that, and I couldn't stop laughing inside. "Here's the divorce notice." I took out a filled-in divorce notice from a bag that my mother had brought me and thrust it in front of John's nose. "You already had this? I'll submit this when I can." John was momentarily confused, his eyes wide open, but he snatched the divorce notice from me and filled in his name and address on the spot. "I feel refreshed knowing I won't have to see your face ever again. See ya." I wanted to say that the feeling was mutual, but I silently watched John leave. Probably John will remarry Mia after filing that divorce notice. I don't know what kind of woman Mia is, but it feels somewhat pitiful to think that she's going to marry that domineering and unpleasant John. I feel like I've done something terrible to Emma, but it was a decision I made long ago. I swore in my heart that I would raise Emma. For a month after he showed up, my life was at peace. The time without being nagged by my husband was like heaven to me. I was discharged from the hospital and started physical rehab. I decided to be taken care of at my parents' house until my leg recovered. My parents were furious at John when they heard about the divorce, but they stopped bothering me about it when I told them I wanted to forget about John. Emma, despite not having a father, doesn't seem lonely and is attending elementary school cheerfully. In the end, Emma saw through him too. Emma noticed John's domineering attitude as well, and perhaps she no longer thinks of her father, who would go out somewhere even on his days off, as a father. Anyway, divorcing John was the right decision. That's what I was convinced of. But one weekday afternoon, I received a call on my mobile phone. I ignored the call when I saw John's name on the screen. However, the phone kept ringing incessantly. Thinking that it wouldn't stop ringing if I kept ignoring it, I finally answered the call. "Hey, Catherine, when are you coming back?" Hearing John's first words, I involuntarily asked back, "Huh?" I wish he wouldn't say something so incomprehensible with such a force that seemed like he was about to burst in yelling at any moment. "What do you mean, coming back? You remarried Mia, didn't you?" When I mentioned Mia's name, John was surprised and exclaimed, "How do you know that?" "Did you think I didn't know? You cheated, right? That's why I demanded alimony." Yes, that's right, but alimony and child support, there's no way I can pay that." "Why do I have to pay alimony in the first place?" You, who never did the housework, should be the one to pay alimony. I was dumbfounded to hear John's argument. I had demanded alimony and child support from John through a lawyer, but it hadn't been paid yet. I knew that John didn't have a lump sum of money, but he should borrow and pay. Yet John was saying something incomprehensible like, I should be the one to pay alimony. I noticed your affair and gathered evidence. Did you see it from the lawyer? It seems that John had already seen the evidence gathered by the detective agency. That would make things easier, but calling me specifically is beyond common sense. I wanted to divorce you even before I found out about the affair. After all, you never helped with housework or child rearing, and you just complained all the time. I'm not your housekeeper, you know? But it's good you were married, right? Now, you have someone to take care of you again. That's the thing. Mia can't do housework. I didn't know. Before marriage, she said, leave everything to me. But once we got married, her cooking is terrible and she doesn't clean. I would have been better off with you. Marry me again. After all, you don't have any money, right? Emma liked me too, didn't she? I couldn't suppress my anger at John for choosing the word better. What? What are you talking about? You divorced me and remarried your affair partner, right? It's not my responsibility. Besides, sorry to say, Emma doesn't like you, and I have money. Don't lie to me. It's obvious. There's no way you have money. You were a housewife. You can't live without me. I had no intentions of telling John about the fortune I inherited from my parents, but when I was confronted this intensely, I had no choice but to reveal it. My parents are the CEOs. Recently, I inherited their assets. It's around $13 million in total, so I can live without working for the rest of my life. I could almost visualize John gaping on the other end of the phone as he heard about this massive fortune from my mouth. You're lying, right? There's no way you have such a huge amount of money. It's true. If you want, I can have my parents tell you. With that, John finally seemed to believe my words and fell silent. Then he suddenly yelled, If it's true, why didn't you tell me? Well, I wanted to tell you, but I knew about your affair and I was thinking of divorcing you, so I thought it didn't matter. At that point, I hadn't yet inherited the assets and there was no issue of property distribution. Damn! John bit his lip in frustration. He probably never imagined that I had such assets. He must be regretting that he should have never divorced me. But I didn't want to suffer his terrible behavior anymore. Can I hang up now? Please pay the alimony properly, reflect on your actions, and never call me again. Goodbye. With that, I hung up the phone. I immediately blocked John's number. No more calls would come. Mom, who were you talking to? Emma came into the room, asked curiously. A friend of mine, but Emma, do you want to go to the amusement park this weekend? Yes! Emma smiled happily. I realized once again that as long as Emma is smiling, that was enough for me. A few days later, I heard that John had broken up with his new wife, Mia. The cause was a dispute over Mia not doing housework, and it seems that Mia dumped John. John, who had been divorced twice in a short period of time, would probably have a hard time getting married again. At any rate, it would be best if there were no more victims, so I hope John remains single for a while. Due to his divorce from Mia, he lost his motivation for work and quit his job at the restaurant. He will probably find another job, but I think it will take a while for him to get back on track. I do feel sorry for him as his life has fallen apart, but it's all his own fault. I blocked his calls so he couldn't beg me for money, and and I made sure not to go to places where I had been with John. In my life, John literally disappeared. After a while, John paid the alimony. With that, John ended up in debt. I don't know how he'll make a living, but I hope he learns his lesson. I'm still living leisurely at my parents' house. My parents told me that it's okay for us to stay as long as we like. After my fracture healed completely, I started part-time work at a local flower shop. Although I can live without working, it suits me better to work outside rather than staying at home all the time. I work diligently on weekdays and go out to play with Emma and my parents on holidays. I felt more joy in life than before. I want to continue living happily with the people I love. I savored the happiness of this moment while looking at Emma's smile.